District of Conservation is sponsored by the Committee for a Constructive Tomorrow, better known as CFACT. To learn more about our sponsor, head over to cfact.org. Thanks for listening to the program.
Ryan Reynolds here for, I guess, my 100th Mint commercial. No, don't. I mean, honestly, when I started this, I thought I only have to do like 4 of these. I mean, it's unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month. How are there still people paying 2 or 3 times that much? I'm sorry, I shouldn't be victim blaming here. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/save. Whenever you're ready.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
Welcome to District of Conservation. I'm your host, Gabriella Hoffman. This podcast offers a sober examination into all things hunting, fishing, shooting sports, energy, environment, and the public policy surrounding it. And this podcast also specializes in original interviews that you won't hear elsewhere. Here's what I have for you today. Natural gas has been a hot button topic of late. From the pausing of LNG export projects, upcoming ones in particular, due to pushback from climate activists and 25-year-old TikTokers who wouldn't last a day without fossil fuels, believe it or not, to federal rulemaking, which is making gas-powered appliances, whether it's your gas stove to gas furnace to water heater and everything under the sun, near impossible, with trying to supposedly increase energy efficiency standards, all the while making it harder for manufacturers of gas-powered appliances to operate under said improvements to energy efficiency standards, which is why I brought on my guest today, Stuart Saulters, Vice President of Government Relations at the American Public Gas Association. Stuart invited me to address his organization at their most recent fly-in in Washington, D.C. area, and I was able to talk about 3 appliances, the aforementioned appliances that are powered by natural gas. And I figured I would bring him onto the program to talk about how his organization, which is a little different than what you hear about natural gas from some other trade associations, and what APGA primarily focuses on is representing America's publicly owned natural gas local distribution companies, LDCs. APGA represents the interests of public gas before Congress, federal agencies, and other energy stakeholders. By developing regulatory and legislative policies that further the goals of our members. In addition, APGA organizes meetings, seminars, and workshops with a specific goal to improve the safety, reliability, operational efficiency, and regulatory environment in which public gas systems operate. Their mission overall is to advocate for community-owned natural gas distribution systems, promoting safety, security, competitiveness, and sustainability of the direct use of natural gas. And natural gas is still a very big part of our electricity generation. I believe last I saw from the Energy Information Administration, which is a government agency, I think natural gas accounts for 34% of utility-scale electricity generation in the United States. So it's a big chunk of energy, in addition to other fossil fuels, coal and gas as well. But I think it's one of the bigger chunks of it nowadays because it's very reliable, it's very clean, very portable. So I'll let Stuart take it away from here to talk about APGA and some of the threats to natural gas that could affect you if your energy utility company is publicly owned and belongs to a group like APGA. Natural gas policy is a very red-hot issue this year. You all have seen the different rules to ban gas stove appliances, gas furnaces. You've seen the rules relatedly to pause or strictly limit LNG export projects. But we're going to talk to one industry expert I've gotten to know over the last few months who had me speak at their annual fly-in. Really thrilled to have Stuart Saulters of American Public Gas Association, where he serves as Vice President of Government Relations, to come talk about what they're up to, what they kind of oversee, and why listeners should care about natural gas policies. Stuart, thank you so much for joining the program.
Yes, glad to be here and have the conversation with you.
How did you get interested in these ideas, and what led you to work for APGA? Let's start with that.
I guess I have a little bit of a unique career path, you can call it that. My education, my college degree is actually in civil engineering. And so I had the opportunity to be a civil engineer in the energy industry. I worked for a integrated oil company. I worked at a refinery and then was able to do upstream production engineering work. So kind of did a little bit of the downstream, did a little bit of the upstream. Before some reason, I decided to do government affairs and government relations and moved to DC to work for the American Petroleum Institute. Kind of dove right in when it came to energy policy. Worked mostly at APGA on pipeline safety policy, but then in 2019 got the opportunity to move to the American Public Gas Association. Initially had more of a regulatory focus, and in 2020 moved into the VP of Government Relations role to kind of oversee our regulatory and legislative involvement. And so it's a great group. I mean, I enjoyed my time at API, but definitely really appreciate how our members are serving the consumers directly. So they're the ones, the utilities around the country that are public utilities, so where the city owns the utility, but they're the ones delivering the gas to the home. I mean, they're the ones that provide the energy folks need to cook their food, to heat their water, to heat their homes, all that good stuff.
Could you speak more to your organization and how you guys differ a little bit from some of the other trade associations that engage in the natural gas space?
Yeah. So we are unique in that our members, like I mentioned, are essentially elements of the cities, are public entities, and public can be confusing because there are publicly traded companies, but public in the sense that they're not owned by a shareholder. They're part of a government, and so our members are not for profit. So there's no board of directors that they have to answer to. Their board is a utility board or a city council. Their CEO technically would be like the mayor, or maybe the president of the utility board. So there is that close relationship with the community they serve when it comes to our members. Other than that, they do differentiate from maybe like a transmission pipeline company because they're the ones that collect the natural gas from those big pipelines that traverse multiple states. They get that gas and then provide it to the homes, the businesses, the industries, mostly smaller industries within their service territories.
I got to know that, of course, when I came to the fly-in and learned a little bit on the differentiation between public utilities and others who kind of operate in this space. And your members were very concerned about certain policies, especially conservation, energy-related rules, especially those coming from the Department of Energy. So what is your organization concerned about as it relates to, let's say, regulatory rulemaking being handed down by the different agencies? What's kind of top of mind for all of you?
Yeah, for us, it's really the Department of Energy's appliance efficiency rulemakings. Our members, like I mentioned, they serve their neighbors, their communities. They serve them by providing the energy that powers or that fuels, a furnace in your home or your gas range or your gas water heater. And it's unfortunate that under this administration, the Department of Energy has kind of taken to I don't know what other way to describe it, but just an electrify everything approach. And so when you think about our members, that's really, that hurts what they do and how they serve their communities. I think if you look at the facts, it's clearly evident that natural gas supports the environment and it supports our country and how we're trying to decrease emissions. And then it's affordable. Natural gas is a more affordable fuel than electricity. And so when you think about these policies that are being put forward, and it's interesting because it's not overt. Like you've seen some cities like in Berkeley, California, that basically just say we ban new natural gas hookups. What this Department of Energy is doing is they're raising the appliance efficiency level so high that a natural gas appliance can't comply. And I agree that we need to move forward as a country in terms of, supporting environmental goals, but it just doesn't make sense. When you think about how energy is delivered to your home, let's just say, just for the sake of argument, it can be done by electricity or it can be done by natural gas. Well, when you think about electricity, a lot of electricity is generated by natural gas. And so you take that natural gas molecule, it comes up from the wellhead, it's put on a pipeline, sent to a power generation facility, and then it's converted to electricity and sent to your home. At each phase in that supply chain, you lose the potential energy of that gas molecule. So when you think about energy delivered to your home just as natural gas, you don't have those steps in the supply chain. And so when you take natural gas and use it directly in your home, you're using 90% of the potential energy, whereas you take natural gas compared to electricity and then use it in your home as electricity, you're only using about 30% of that potential energy. So I kind of dove off into the weeds there. So let me know if I need to clarify, but hopefully your listeners see that, this electrify everything approach is not achieving these goals that they say it's achieving.
Right. And as it relates to a couple appliances that I had mentioned during your fly-in, one in particular that was interesting or more top of mind was the gas furnace regulation. So they want to move it from an 80% to 95% efficiency rate, which would make it a lot more expensive for consumers. I think it would increase on average $500 per appliance for the cost of like moving away to this condensing furnace that they want to push. And then I think there's also like $2,200 on average in terms of installation costs. For gas stoves, that final rule was, you informed me that the final rule was handed down. So it went from banning 96% of models on the market to keeping 97, but we still have to be very kind of skeptical because they could twist that language, maybe change it later on, never really take them at face value because it's always, up for discussion. And then I think I forget what the average cost increase would have been had they done that, but people do think in terms of like, yes, they want energy efficiency, but should it come at the cost of your pocketbook? Do you really have to sacrifice your livelihood to have a clean environment? And that's the question a lot of people have. Are the trade-offs worth better than, keeping something that's stable, that's cost effective for the most part, or something that works and you're familiar with, and this kind of untested technology or alternatives, which could actually turn out to be worse for the environment? I don't think they're thinking clearly, in my personal opinion, Stuart, about this, because I don't know if you glanced over kind of the rules. I was looking over, some of these when we were doing our action center at Independent Women's Forum, Independent Women's Network, and the cost of conversion was very concerning to me. The so-called savings across the lifetime of the new appliance was very paltry. I think with the ceiling fan one, I think it was like $36 across the lifetime. And then I think some others were like $3 across the lifetime of the new appliance, and like very meager and paltry compared to what you would, keep and have with the existing models. Oh, they were talking about climate savings. And I don't know if that's a serious figure. You tell me. They were saying that you're going to save so much in climate savings by switching over to these more fully electric or more environmentally friendly alternatives. I don't know if you had any, doubts about that too, but they were saying that's going to be something that consumers will like, knowing that it's going to be a lot, more efficient with so-called climate savings with that. But I don't know if those are real numbers we can really bank on. You tell me.
Yes. Well, we're in the process of suing the Department of Energy because we don't agree with the numbers as they've put them forward. A couple things I can maybe unpack a little bit, Gabriella. Let me just say at the outset here, APGA, we're for all of the above energy solutions. We're for energy efficiency. We agree that we need, as a country, we need to achieve goals that support our environment and don't harm our environment. But it needs to be done practically, and it needs to be done, and I think you said it, not at the expense of, you know, your listeners. There needs to be practical solutions put forward, and there can be, and natural gas can be a part of that solution. And that's what's frustrating, right? Is you like the gas stove, the efficiency savings for the gas range, even though it preserves the market, a lot of the market, which we're all for, but the efficiency savings is like $3 over 14 years.
Yes.
And so why are we, I mean, as a taxpayer, why is my taxpayer dollars funding some agency that's worried about saving $3 for a consumer over 14 years? Like, let's be realistic in what we're trying to do as a country to, achieve our environmental goals. And so I think that's just frustrating. The other frustrating thing, and I don't know if this is what you're kind of alluding to, but is the social cost of greenhouse gases. So that is a metric that, even though it's never really been kind of gone through the administrative procedure, never kind of gone through kind of a formal, at least as I believe, a process that allowed good public input into how it was shaped and formed. That's probably more my opinion, but I'll stick to it. That social cost of greenhouse gas number is so arbitrary. And frankly, this administration has set it as such that they can justify any rule that they do because they say the societal benefits are such because of this social cost of greenhouse gas number. The societal benefits are such that, it's going to benefit everybody if we limit fossil fuel use because of the impact to, whatever, based on some arbitrary number. So it's definitely a frustrating environment, if you will, in how we're trying to do these, engage in these regulations and be a part of the process.
It is. And you should be very clear about, if you're an administrator or someone creating these rules, what you intend to do. But if you're saying that it has to be all geared towards, the environment and not the consumer, I don't know. This is kind of my reading into this administration for sure. It seems like they put in the environment, so to speak, above people instead of balancing both on an equal footing. And, we don't have to sacrifice one versus the other. And statistics show the more you pay for certain climate provisions, I think it was like a AP NORC poll from 2019, where it said like the more people pay to like, whether it's, to make your appliance more efficient or under the guise of that or to fight climate change, the more it increases by $10 increments, you see actually less support for such. So when it comes down to your pocketbook, people who are reasonable and say like, yeah, I want, a clean environment. I don't want to like have any runoff. I don't want to pollute. Reasonable people will say like, this is coming at a cost that should not be so high to me. And am I really having an immeasurable impact in lowering my footprint, lowering my impact? If I'm not going to support this. So consumers are very privy about that. So that is why a lot of people are paying attention to these kind of rulemakings that are happening on commonly owned household appliances, especially in the natural gas space.
Yeah. And it's very interesting. I mean, DOE's own analysis in the furnace rule shows that consumers in the North, the states where it's cold and they want a good, efficient furnace because they run it so often because it's cold, they're switching to more innovative technology like the condensing furnace that you mentioned. But if you're in the South or if you're in a shoulder state, you're not operating your furnace as much at your home. And so do you really need to pay all that money for a whiz-bang new technology furnace when you're only operating it, a couple months out of the year? There's people in Minnesota that operate their furnace 6 months out of the year, right? And so you're going to pay because, like we've talked about, the payback is there for you as the homeowner to invest in a higher efficiency appliance because you're going to operate it more. And so with DOE just really forcing consumers to that condensing technology, it doesn't make a lot of sense because, an 80, 85 efficient furnace is just as good in Florida as a 95% efficient furnace is in Minnesota.
And if my listeners are interested in learning about these regulations, how it'll affect their public utility? Because I bet you there are some people listening and perhaps they live in a state or a locality where there is a public utility, probably represented by your organization. So if they want to learn more about this, they're concerned, what would you like them to do, or where would you like to point them to?
Yeah, so definitely encourage them to go to our website, apga.org, apga.org. Make sure I get all the letters in there. And we have a webpage dedicated to the furnace rule. We put together a quick video that folks can look at to learn a little bit about the furnace rule in particular. The website kind of covers all of the appliance efficiency rulemakings that we're monitoring. But yeah, the furnace rule, at this point, it is, I don't want to say the most egregious because there's definitely some waiting in the wings, but it definitely maybe, I hate to say this too, but I'll say it's a little sneaky, right? I think the way the Department of Energy laid out their final rulemaking, it does kind of not tell the whole story to the consumer in terms of, if this rule goes final, if our litigation is unsuccessful, you as the homeowner are going to come to the end of your furnace's life and you're going to think, okay, I'm just going to put in a new one of the one I had. Well, lo and behold, you had a non-condensing one and you can't buy that anymore. The HVAC people are telling you all we can give you is condensing. And then that means you got to redo, the venting in your house, renovate some of your, utility space, or you can do electric. You can do a heat pump, which, at some level doesn't require that venting home renovation changes. And so, if it's the middle of January, you just want something, maybe you don't have the time to dedicate to renovate your house for this new condensing furnace. So you're just like, give me the electric one, and that's bad. that's just wrong in my opinion. So I definitely think it's a policy that homeowners, that your listeners need to be aware of. And I would love for their voices to be heard, so that, this administration knows they're hurting people. They're hurting consumers.
Yeah, the consumer priorities should be top of mind for a lot of people. And again, I think people they think they have to choose from extremes about nature over people. And a fundamental goal here is to showcase that that's not true, that they're not mutually exclusive. They work in sync with each other. Mm-hmm. And it's extremely important, to keep that kind of balance alive. Have efficient stuff, but also not worsen your footprint. And I think in just totality with a lot of the appliance regulations I've seen, some of them very questionable. Outside of what you guys deal with, the dishwasher stuff, they wanted to lower it from 5 gallons to 3.2. It require more cycling and washing, so wasting more water, taking more time to wash dishes. So it doesn't make any sense, practically speaking, with respect to that. So I'm just like, this is not energy, and if this is not energy efficient, if you're calling for more water to be used and you're still having to use, energy but exhaust it more. So yeah, they have a lot of questions to answer, and it's extremely important that those who are concerned you could actually email. If people don't know this, you can directly email the energy secretary and tell her that you don't like what the rules are, or you would like to have more sensible policy. But they make it really hard to reach out to them. That's a problem. But I guess through organizations like yours, people can reach out through them. We have a portal at Independent Women's Network where supporters or people or users rather, they can go and chime in. We have a pre-filled out form, and then it directly sends to Jennifer Granholm, Secretary Granholm. Or you could, write letters to the editor, really make your voice heard, maybe do a plea on social media. I know that also works a lot with supporting kind of, so-called energy efficiency stuff, or what environmentalists are really good at is really utilizing social media to their advantage. But I think consumers could kind of, counter that with social media videos about saying why I like my gas furnace or why I like my gas stove. Make the similar plea too. I think there's opportunities for that, if you don't weigh in on comments. But is there any other kind of final thoughts you have, Stuart, about ways for people to get engaged with your organization, support their local utilities, learn more about the issue outside of some of the resources you said, but any final parting thoughts you have?
Yeah, I'll just say one more thing just in the terms of engagement, just in the realm of engagement is, last week we saw both members of the Senate and members of the House of Representatives bring a resolution of disapproval against the final furnace rule. So there are limitations to what legislators can do when it comes to regulatory actions. We've got the checks and balances in our government, but at the same time, I think making your elected officials aware of your thoughts on what's happening within this administration, and both Republicans and Democrats, right? I mean, I think, if you're represented by, a Democrat elected official, like they especially need to know that you don't agree with this administration's policies. And it's interesting. We had there was 2 bills that were introduced related to the gas stove regulation. They both had 29 Democrats support them, and that was in the House. And so, there's definitely people that are hearing what the consumers are saying, what their constituents are saying, which is good, which is how it's supposed to work. And so I think, just wanted to throw that out there in addition to what you said, and also too, I'll double tap the op-ed thing. I mean, I think that's huge, whether it's, you yourself, or if you wanted to work with a public utility, I'm happy to help out in that connection. But just letting folks know your thoughts, as a homeowner, as a consumer is huge, and just, informing and educating and making aware kind of your thoughts on these issues and concerns.
That's a good kind of call to action relating to that. But really, yes, it may feel a little difficult because they are making these rules. They have these conclusions. It's very hard to get them to change unless you sue them or threaten to sue them, or public opinion is just so viscerally against it, which is what forced them to change, banning almost every single gas stove model to now keeping most under what we can assume could be changed. I don't know. But what they've put, because of the response to the gas stove recommendation, so to speak, they reverse course and listen to consumers and groups like yours and the American Gas Association, everyone else who was engaged on the stakeholder front there. So they do listen to opinion when it becomes negative, overwhelmingly against them. But they're a little stubborn because they're just so wrapped up into, unfortunately, going on this net zero course that they've kind of ignore other things, the trade-offs with going fully to net zero, which I think sometimes conflicts with all of the above. And it really only, is very limited. It's not all of the above when you chart just simply for that. But Stuart, anything else, any more links? But APGA, let's make sure everyone listening is learning more about the organization, doing some research, getting involved, and maybe keeping you guys aware of different things that happen. But look to see what your local utility or public utility gas company is doing. For those of you in the area, in Virginia, I think you said, Stuart, there's only like Richmond and a handful of others, but just as important as, other gas entities, we want to obviously include the perspective of public utilities. Stuart, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yes, I appreciate the opportunity to talk about these issues. Always good to get the word out. So thank you for this chance to do.
Thanks for listening to District of Conservation. If you enjoyed what you heard today, go leave us some reviews on Apple and Spotify or wherever podcasts are played. Your feedback will help us reach more people, and I love to know what is on your mind after each episode. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter to never miss a beat or a guest announcement, because that is our way of updating all of you listeners, and we have just hit 1,000 followers on Instagram for the podcast account. Thank you very much. And if you have any guest suggestions or topics you want to hear on the show, I am all ears. I would love to hear your feedback there. Thanks for listening, and stay tuned for the next episode.